Hi everyone, welcome to Data Talks Club. This event is brought to you. I think I haven't done this in a while. Usually I remember the line, I remember what to say
All
without
is good.
thinking about this. And yeah, so we haven't had podcast interviews like in 3 weeks, maybe four. So
Hmm.
now we are finally back. We're again looking for speakers. So if somebody wants to speak, let us know. Anyways, so welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by Datalogs Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events, or at least we try. And if you want to know more about our events, there is a link in the description. Click on that link and check what we have in our pipeline. And I need to update the number of subscribers. I think now it's more. So do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Very important. This way you'll stay up to date with all our future streams, like the one we have today. And we have a great Slack community where you can hang out with other data enthusiasts. During today's interview, you can ask any question you want. There is a pinned link in the live chat. Click on that link, ask your questions, and we will be covering these questions during the interview. And I still remember something. That's good. So I haven't forgotten completely what to ask. I'll quickly open the questions so I can monitor them, which I should have done before. Okay,
It's
so I
okay.
have
I feel you. It's okay. It's also my first podcast on the other side of the podcast. So there you go. It's fine.
on the other side. So you interview people.
Mm.
No.
I mean, everyone these days can have a podcast. My friends and I tried to do a tango podcast like some time ago. And yeah, there
Tango
I
podcast.
interviewed like friends. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But tango is a very visual topic, and podcast is typically audio only.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how do you talk about tango? Like, how do you discuss different moves? If
Well, we
it's
don't
just,
discuss moves. That's the thing. We
uh-huh,
talk about the social aspect of tango. We talk about how interesting the invitation in tango is, about our experiences leading and following in tango, like dancing with people, meeting people, going to events, and being obsessed enough to like travel around the world just to do tango. Those sorts of things, like everything but the actual dance.
mm-hmm. Do you travel around the world to meet other people and dance tango?
Yes, actually, well,
Ah,
around
that's
Europe
also
so far,
around
but
Europe. Mm.
yeah.
I only tried bachata, so I haven't
Oh
tried
yeah.
tango.
Yeah,
So
people do travel for bachata as well. So
yeah, I can imagine, because it's also fun.
yeah, it is. It
I
is.
I think I attended like 6 sessions. Yeah, I only remember the basic move. But,
Yeah, I mean
uh,
that's good enough, you know, like you can
yeah.
already go dance socially with just that.
Mhm. Yeah, right. Anyways, this week we will not talk about tango, maybe a little bit. So we will talk about building a domestic risk assessment tool. And we have a special guest today, Sabina. Do I pronounce it correctly, Sabina? Or
Yeah, yeah.
German would
It's
be Sabina, I
perfect.
think.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's Romanian, the pronunciation, yeah.
Okay. So Sabina works on Frontline's 100 AI product development. Frontline 100 is a company name. So she's involved in all aspects of model development, from data wrangling and visualization to statistical tests, model training, and validation. She has a background in natural sciences and previously worked as a data analyst in finance and SaaS companies. As a freelance data analyst, she takes on challenging projects for mission-driven companies, being especially interested in social impact, healthcare, and accessibility. You are a freelancer, right?
Yes, at the moment,
Okay.
yes. Yes.
So welcome to our interview.
Nice to see you. Nice to
Yeah.
see you again. I hope you have your Soylent with you.
It's
Was
there.
it Soylent, right?
It was Y-food.
Y food. Yeah, that's the brand that they have here, the
Yeah.
meal replacement, because how we met, right?
Yeah, that's how we met. Yeah. So there, for background, so this is how we met. So there was a meetup. I think it was actually co-organized by Data Talks Club, but the only thing we did to co-organize the event is place our logo there. It was mostly done by DLT Hub, which
Mm-mm-mm.
bought food. What else? They provided the office and
Food and
organized
drinks,
the
very
event,
important.
links. Yeah. So basically, they did the whole thing, and they just asked me to show up. Like, how can I say no to that? Right?
Yeah, and it was so funny because I knew about Data Talks, and after the event, I was like, wait a second, is this person that I met actually from Data Talks? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a bit noisy there. Like they have how do you call it a room
Mm-hmm.
for meetups, right? It's not the largest room for meetups, and when many people start speaking there, it gets loud. So of course, I was trying to hide in a lesser
Mm.
loud room, and then there was Sabina also hiding, and yeah, I had this Y food bottle, which is like a meal replacement. Just you drink and it has like 500 calories. And
Yeah.
then your comment was like, I'm more like a Hugh person. Hugh person.
Yeah, because I was very into meal replacement at some point. Like I drank Huel for lunch every single day.
Ah, so it was that into
Yeah,
that much.
yeah. Yeah, I
I
mean, I
see.
still have like Huel at home, but I just find it difficult to have it nowadays on a regular basis.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, I would still love to have Huel. It's great, like time saver.
Mhm. Yeah, I just drink it after gym usually, or when I don't have enough. Like I want to consume a certain amount of protein per day, and when
Hmm.
I don't hit the number, so then I just drink this because like they have a lot of protein. Anyways,
Yeah.
so this is how we met. Then we talked a little bit about Sabina's work, and that was pretty
Hmm.
interesting. So when we connected later on LinkedIn, I thought I have to interview her. So that's why we're here talking today. And yeah, as always, the questions for today's interview are prepared by Johanna Bayer. Thanks, Johanna, for your help. So let's start.
Let's
And
go.
before we go into our main topic, we start with your background. Can you tell us about your career journey so far?
Yeah, I think the bio was quite well put already. Like I've been in the workplace for very little time, but I've already had quite a few career switches. So yeah, I studied chemistry at the University of Cambridge, started off with natural sciences and then specialized in organic chemistry. Afterwards, I decided that lab work was not really my thing. I much more preferred the thinking work of organic chemistry compared to the grunt work of doing experiments and working in the wet lab. So then I thought that I would like to do something either in consulting, but then this opportunity appeared to work as a data analyst in Tenerife, and I had to take it because it's quite rare to get to work on something very interesting, also for mission driven companies, and also in a lovely place to live
Mhm,
in. Yeah. And then from finance, I realized I didn't like Excel that much. I didn't want to work all of my life in Excel. It wasn't really my thing. I was very keen on Python since the pandemic. I got like, I'm not sure if you know about Hyperskill, but they're
I
super
have no idea what is
cool.
that.
Yeah, so, but you know about JetBrains by any chance?
JetBrains, yeah.
Yeah, so like they've worked with Hyperskill on creating this learning platform for Python and lots of other programming languages, and I think it's one of the best I've seen. And that's how I
Mhm.
started learning Python, and I knew I liked it
Hyper
since then.
scale, right?
Hyperskill.
Skill, hyper skill.
Yeah, yeah, I highly recommend it. It is quite pricey, but I think they offer a lot of value as
Mhm,
well. Yeah, so I started learning Python and I thought, hey, I mean, I've already worked in data analysis in finance and I already like know a bit of programming. And then I sort of went for Ironhack, like and study data analytics with them. And since I've been taking data analytics positions, switched to freelancing because I find it more suited to my interests. I like dipping my toes into multiple fields. And yeah, right now my main focus is Frontline 100 because I think the work that we do is very important and very impactful. And I really, really love it. I think obviously the topic is quite heavy, so saying it very enthusiastically might come across as weird, but I think I really love having the opportunity to contribute to such a topic.
And right now, I want to ask you, of course, the topic, but I want to give a warning, a disclaimer. Not a disclaimer, probably a warning would be a better word. That we are going to talk about a sensitive topic, which is domestic abuse and violence. And if you know somebody who is experiencing domestic abuse, you should seek for help. And if you live in Germany, there is a national helpline available at 116016. And if you live somewhere else, please find a number to contact. And I think this is an important topic. That's why when I heard about what Sabina is doing, I have not heard about AI applications to that topic. So that's why we're here. I wanted to talk about that. So yeah, please tell us about Frontline 100 and what you're trying to solve.
Right. So, well, the main purpose of Frontline 100 is to end domestic abuse sooner. And as you very correctly pointed out, AI in this field is not something that's quite very common, which is why what we're bringing to domestic abuse prevention is quite relevant. Most of the domestic abuse risk assessments in the field are on paper only. So I think that having an AI tool involved in this, especially with all of the hype around AI and having in general an application of AI into social issues is very relevant. So I was very excited when I first saw the Frontline website. I was like, this is incredible. Like I've never thought of using AI for such a cause. So I was very excited from the get-go.
How did you find them, or did they find you?
It's very funny because I found them through a Telegram group. So one
Okay.
of the previous data scientists, Joy, like he posted in a TU, like the computer science university alumni Telegram group. And then yeah, my one of my friends who also studied at TU sent me this job post, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. This is exactly what I want, because I
Mhm.
was looking for many positions at the time. So it's, yeah, it
Mhm.
was very fun
Because
coincidence.
I usually, well, I'm not actively looking for a job, but sometimes I come across different job descriptions, positions. Typically, it's on LinkedIn, and usually it's like e-commerce or internet companies like ed tech or
Yeah.
marketing or like the usual thing, right? So I don't typically come across social initiatives like that one. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, like how people can find it. Like, for example, if I want to also contribute to a similar project, where would you suggest to find for jobs in this area?
To be fair, what I started doing now is simply to look for organizations that I'm interested in and see if they have openings. Because I think, as you said, it's very rare that you would find these job adverts. And I remember I saw one, I follow Our World in Data quite a lot because they post very interesting reports and data visualizations. Yeah, and at some point I just found a job post that was expiring the same day, so I was like, okay, I have to code something now so I can
Mhm.
apply. So yeah, I would suggest to actively look for organizations in the causes that you're interested in, be it data transparency, be it accessibility, social impact, whatever, and follow them and look for updates or even message them. Because if they're small organizations, they're more likely to answer than if they're bigger.
And I diverged a little bit. So we talked about domestic abuse, and you
Yes.
said that it's very rare that AI is used to for risk assessment of domestic abuse. And I'm wondering how is it done usually? Like you said, it's done on paper, but how exactly? What is the process and what the risk assessment of what? Like, are they looking at a family and think like how likely that in this family there is this problem? Or how, like I'm trying to figure out what's the how to put it correctly. Like typically in the usual settings, I would say business case, but like it sounds very weird to say it like that here.
Yeah, yeah, a use case maybe.
Use case, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Like
so or
how
maybe a
does it look like
scenario.
usually? Scenario,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say like what happens at the moment is you have victims interacting with institutions, be it police, be it healthcare practitioners, be it social workers. And the people that they're in contact with, they usually administer a survey which has been studied previously and shows high correlation with abuse, usually physical and sexual abuse. That's typically what is being tested. However, and it's usually just about the victim's experience. There have been qualitative studies as well, but it's mostly very academic. And what's currently used by police officers in Germany and in Germany, it's a mixture of risk assessment tools that were built in North America for people in that demographic based on data that they've collected. And it's used on the German population. And it's usually, yeah, administered a set of questions, and then based on that, whether the person is at high risk or medium risk.
But usually, so there is a victim, right?
Mhm.
And somebody is talking to them, police, healthcare,
Yes.
personnel, social workers. But if the victim already approached them, they already know that there is a problem, or they approach them with a different, with something different.
What do you mean by approach them with
Like
something
if I
different?
already go to the police and say, look, like my husband is beating me up, like they kind of already know that.
Yeah, so what can happen is that some people, yes, like at that point, it already is quite a big problem. We have already, our tool is also meant for cases that are not like that. But in that case, even then, because a victim might still be in love with their partner, they might not disclose everything that has happened in the relationship. So, for example, maybe they come because of financial abuse or maybe because of physical abuse, but they haven't disclosed that there has been sexual abuse happening as well. And this is what we're trying to predict using our tools. Because, yeah, even if they come, maybe they change their minds as well,
Mhm.
right? Because it's a very high pressure environment that they're in right then, being asked questions about the police, very personal questions as well, and they might tone down on the things that they might disclose. So then it's quite important to have these risk assessments, not only to see what will happen in the future, but also what is likely happening right now that a person might not disclose in that moment.
Okay. So in this scenario, like if I'm a police officer, I would have something like that and with
Yes.
very serious face ask tough, no, not tough, but like these questions and maybe put some pressure on the victim, on the person. Like I can imagine like a room, maybe without windows, like, and then
Yeah.
like if you put in this environment and then somebody with a piece of paper, serious face,
Yeah.
like taking notes. So this is how it's done right now.
Yes. Yes. Very, very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
And how are you approaching it?
Right. So first off, we're taking things off paper. We already have an app built to for right now for people interacting with victims to also track cases of domestic abuse, which I think is also another plus added, because besides having the paper tracking of what happened, you can also look over time at what cases occurred, like how many are high risk, how many are medium. You can also look at the person's history as well. Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of interaction with the victim itself at the moment, given that the survey is still administered by a social worker or police officer, there's still trainings that we do with the people so that they administer it in the way that it's meant to be. We cannot eliminate that human part or make it better, but we can create the interface to help relieve the load off the social workers and police officers, which are obviously overworked as well, which might come into play when it comes to their interactions with victim. And hopefully in the future, it might work on that as well.
Mm-hmm. So it would be a police officer sitting with a phone and talking to the victim and then taking maybe marking questions, right? Answers to the question.
Yeah. We have been thinking about maybe an LLM version of that, given LLMs are so popular at the moment, you know, like where you'd have a chatbot that interacts directly with the victim and directly extracts the answer, but that is already like a very high involvement and requires much more funding. But we would be very keen on doing that and maybe making it easier for victims to come forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned that currently what is happening is that there are these paper surveys with questions coming from the United States, from Canada, from North America, right?
Yes.
And they are applied to Germans.
Yes.
And this is something you also change, right? So do you do something specific to geography, to the country?
Yes. So we already have done 2 surveys looking at domestic abuse, first on a sample of 7,400 people, which is nationally representative, and we also use weighting in order to ensure that we have all of the demographics are national representative as well. And then we did a second survey looking only at people who have been victims in the first one and seeing whether they've re-experienced abuse after 3 months. And this, again, is another innovation that we're doing, because what happens at the moment is when people are looking at reoccurrence of domestic abuse, they are looking at reoccurrence after a year or more. Like some tools are after 7 years, you can imagine. And looking at 3 months brings it in more immediate attention and makes it better for resource management as well. Because you can know, like, you have to act within 3 months, not within a year.
And AI here means that you do some sort of machine learning, or what exactly?
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
not
I mean,
LLMs.
obviously for the audience, like for a general audience, AI already means machine learning. But if you're a data audience, you know that AI is an if element, but
Because like now when I hear AI, to me it's like all this LLM stuff, right? So
oh,
when
right.
you can
Yeah.
actually feel like that this thing is somehow intelligent, right? When I talk to ChatGPT, like it feels like I'm talking to a very smart person, right? Oh,
Yeah, so a very literate person, maybe. Like,
literate, yeah, literate.
yeah,
Like, cause like the expression it uses are like
much better
literate.
than ones I use, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's better, but like it's different. Like I don't know if people speak like that, but yeah, it's
Yeah, I
different.
think it's fantastic for
Mhm,
writing text. I find it so useful for
mhm,
writing text.
mhm. So you use machine learning And then you said you had the survey with 740 people that you interviewed, and this
7,400
7,000,
people. Yes, very important
7,400,
too.
10 times more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This is serious. And this is what you use for your as your training data, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes.
And so the target variable here was uh, whether it was repeated, like the abuse happened again in 3 months, right?
That's one of them. Yes.
That's one of them. So you have multiple. And I guess the features are the answers to questions.
Exactly. Yes. I
Uh-huh.
mean, the features and the targets are answers to questions, right? So we're looking at five different types of abuse. So it's digital, emotional, financial, physical, and sexual. And this again is another plus that we have compared to what's happening at the moment, because perhaps some intervention tactics might need for you to look at the different types of abuse. And one example of that would be a person experiences physical abuse, intense physical abuse, and then the immediate course of action would be leave your partner. However, if you're financially dependent on that
Mhm.
partner, then that is very tricky to do, which is important to be able to distinguish between these categories. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to remember where we're. Oh, the targets. Yes, sorry. Yeah, so we have the targets for from digital to sexual abuse, and we're using questions from questions that do not point directly to that type of abuse. So what we call proxy questions, in order to figure out whether that abuse is happening or not at the current moment, or whether it will happen in 3 months. So we have basically 10 targets. No, yes, 10 targets. So five types of abuse and identification and recidivism, as we call it internally.
And I imagine like coming up with this survey was the most difficult part, right? Or and
Yes.
then interviewing people, because like I imagine if I, as a data scientist, try to come up with this survey, it will probably not be a very good survey. While like you have to have proper social scientists, right, who know how to ask questions.
Yeah, so I mean, for this, I wasn't part of the data collection because that happened before I joined the company. But basically, we took the literature for this because there's already a huge body of literature looking at surveys and creating these risk assessments. And we tried to use the questions that were most relevant in those risk assessments. And in addition, some questions that we wanted to test out and to see whether they have any correlation with abuse.
Mhm. And I imagine you also need to work closely with police and social workers, right?
So at the moment, we're piloting and we're working closely with police and social workers. And we also have a lot of advisors on our team who work in criminal law and uh,
Hmm.
domestic abuse and also econometrics, like you name it. If you look at our website, I think we have around 12 people that
Hmm.
have advised us along the way, because our CEO, like he's the main domain expert. Lynn is also a domain expert as well, a social scientist. So she's been my first point of contact when it came to technical and social science questions. But obviously, like the CEO, he has been working like in the field for 15 years and knows a lot of the nitty gritty
Hmm.
that we should take into account when we create these tools, because it can get very theoretical times. And I think with that, as a data scientist, you can get very technical and very into your world of developing a lot of models and like looking at all of these features. But then in reality, you don't need as much technicality.
Hmm. So the founders, so it was CTO and CEO, right?
Well,
They
so we have
other people
CEO,
too.
CDO, and CTO.
So there were three co-founders, right? They
Yeah.
do they all come from this how to say business domain? Like it sounds that doesn't sound very good, but like do they all come from this domain?
So yes, the CEO definitely. Like he's worked
Hmm
15 years in the charity sector. Balin, I think, I mean, she's been working mostly on frontline and she's done research before in toxic masculinity, if I remember correctly. That was her master thesis. And then Adam, the CTO, I think his background is more in business. He takes care of all of the development aspects of
hmm
Lizzie.
hmm Lazy. We didn't talk what lazy means. I have it in my
Yes.
notes. So this is
Yes, I
the
know.
risk assessment tool, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
Why it's called lazy?
Well, I will assume you don't know how the different risk assessments are called. They're just
I have no idea.
abbreviations, ODARA, DASH, DA, and we thought we might make something a bit more humanizing in this area, especially as it's quite a grueling experience to go through. So this is why we went for Lizzie.
hmm So lazy is just a name.
Yes, it's,
It doesn't stand for anything.
well, no, it's not an acronym.
Okay. So coming back to like we were discussing the co-founders, and you said that CEO is a domain expert and he's been in this area for quite some time, like
Yes,
15
yes,
years, you said.
yes,
And
yes,
was it something that he noticed in his line of work that this could be optimized, that right now with
yes.
just a paper survey and the pressure it puts on people, it's not
Yeah,
working and we can make it better?
yes,
And he decided that there should be a company, right?
yes,
Like
yes.
there should be a way to solve this problem differently.
Yes, yes,
Hmm
yes. And I mean, like, yeah, so Babs, like, he also has a background, some background in statistics, and Balin, like, being the data scientist as well, like, you can see how these two fields can merge and come up with this idea. And especially in Germany, as you well know, in Berlin, you have to carry cash everywhere. Digitalizing is probably not that bad of an idea. It's something that Germany is a bit behind on in some sense.
Oh, in some sense, yeah. Well, right now, even Spätis, like these late night shops, start accepting cards. So
Yeah, we're slowly
probably
getting there.
it's moving in the right direction. But like I remember mm, in Poland, 12 years ago, it was already possible to pay everyone with just touching your card to the terminal.
Really? 12 years ago
Yeah,
with the phone? Are you
yeah, by pass.
serious? No way.
Yeah. And then, like in Germany, it appeared only after Corona, because like you weren't supposed to touch this pad,
Oh
right,
yeah, yeah,
digital
yeah,
pad.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
only because of Corona in Germany, it started to be possible to pay with just touching.
Yeah, but it's still like I find it now I have a reverse culture shock when I go to different countries and I'm so surprised they accept card after living in Berlin. Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember in France, in a village, like I wanted to buy an ice cream, and there was a terminal, so I could just pay for this ice cream. It was like a just usual ice cream
Here
stand
it's
outside.
minimum €5, €10, something like
Yeah,
this.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, and this is just one of the areas where digitalization is lagging behind, right? But in other areas, especially like this is consumer facing. So this one is kind of moving forward slowly, but moving, right? But in other areas, like social areas, police, like it's probably behind, right?
Yes, yes. And there is
Mhm.
obviously lots of skepticism, right? When bringing in AI to yeah, to help officers. But that's the thing, like I think there has been lots of news criticizing the way that AI has been used in order to make decisions, and this is why we don't we haven't created Lizzie to make decisions for police officers, but to help them. It's a tool for them to make a decision. However, it has been shown in practice that risk assessments are more effective than an expert judgment. So this is why I think it's quite important to have these tools, but not use them as the decision makers.
Which means that instead of just saying the probability of abuse occurring again is very high, you also explain why, right? Or what does it mean in practice that you don't use it to make decisions, but to guide the
That
users?
that we that we're looking at the risk of the abuse occurring, but we are not social workers, we're not police officers, we're a research company. So we can tell you that based on the research that we've done, this person is likely experiencing abuse. And you, as an expert, you can say, okay, if they're experiencing high financial abuse and high physical abuse, this is what I should do in this scenario. We don't give recommendation, like we give suggestions, like, okay, this is something that may help, but we are not there to make decisions.
Okay. And the users, like the police officers, the social workers, they go through the survey, then they see the results. I imagine immediately, right? They don't need to send the results anywhere and wait for a month to
Oh
get back
yeah,
to you,
obviously, obviously.
which is
And they don't
probably
need
an
to
improvement.
calculate it themselves. They don't need to put
Yeah.
the points. Yeah.
Mhm. So, like, they go through the survey, they get the results immediately, and they see that, like, for these types of abuse, the probability that this abuse is happening is high. And then there are some suggestions of what they can do next, right? And then it's up to
Well,
them to decide what to do.
like minimal suggestions, because again, we're not the ones who are dealing with the victim. We're here
Mhm.
to like say that from our research, we've seen that these are good indicators of abuse. And if these are happening at this frequency, then it's likely, it's very, very likely that this person is experiencing domestic abuse.
Does it help to address this, the skepticism you mentioned?
What do you mean? Oh,
Like you said that it was met with skepticism because people say like AI, no, it's not going to help.
yes, obviously. Like we're transparent about the metrics we've used, and we've been for many iterations in order to make this as good as possible, right? Like we've been looking at the typical standards in the industry, like the AUC score. We've looked at false positives, false negatives. Obviously, we've tried to put the weight on removing false negatives as much as possible. But at the same time, if we don't if we say that everything is high risk, then that's not very useful either. So we've tried to strike a balance as much as possible, thinking about the typical metrics that are used and also thinking about the types of questions that we selected in our survey and what's more likely to be answered by someone in those situations.
So this is also important because not like maybe there are good questions that can show you that this sort of abuse is happening, but the victim might not answer them, right?
Yeah, might be less likely to answer. However, we're hope. The thing is, like in different settings, you will have different answers, and this is also why, like the survey that we did was online rather than in person, because in person you already have some biases occurring from like when the interviewer asked the questions to receiving the answer.
And these biases are so here it means that because a person is asking, there could be some pressure. Like
Yeah,
even though the
definitely.
person might be like the friendliest person on earth, still because like somebody is asking, and then you might think, okay, like there's another person, like why are they asking that? Right? It might not give the
I think humans are very complicated and have complicated emotions. So it's very difficult to predict that, right? So removing this intermediary step is likely to reduce such biases. There's also such a thing as social desirability bias. So, for example, if You might not, like if you're a man and you disclose that you've been experiencing abuse, that might not fare well, right? You might not want to be seen as a weak man.
Mhm. I see. And when it's online, there is less. Because, like, I imagine if like there is this like big police officer. Because in Berlin, like the in-field police officers, they have to be quite strong.
Mhm.
And I see that they are like usually tall, like they have muscles. Like, and if this person is asking you, like you maybe don't want to admit that you're weak.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
if it's just a screen and you tick boxes there, it's less likely that you give incorrect answers. This is what you're saying, right?
yes, this is what I would expect, right? Like you're simply interacting online. You don't have your identity disclosed, right? We're also
Mm.
taking care to not have the identity of the people that we have surveyed. So yes, we're hoping to reduce that bias that is already happening. And this is also important because a lot of studies in domestic abuse sector are also based on police data, right? And police data will be inherently biased because of the way it's been collected, right? So this is where the biases come in. We hope to eliminate at least those biases through having this online survey.
Like how do people get to fill the survey? Is it something like they are in police and then the police officer says, okay, there is this tool. I will leave now, but please, while I am away, can you please go through the website and answer questions, or how does it
No, no, no.
work in practice?
I think they ask the questions. So, yeah, they ask the questions and fill in the survey or are administered, given a tablet where they can answer these questions. But yes, we're
Because if a
piloting and
person
we're
is asking,
learning.
because if a person is asking, then you have these biases, right? Like even if they are sitting with a tablet and then like I'm asking you and then making some notes here, it's still me asking you.
Yes, so actually, I'm not completely sure about this because I've been kept very much in the development side of things. I would say potential. It could be either or, but
Mm.
yeah, I think I will stick with the data side.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe let's go into the development side of things then. Uh,
Mm.
well, I imagine that in order to, like we talked about skepticism, right? And in my experience, to reduce this level of skepticism, a person needs to understand what is happening inside. And usually you want to use simple models. Like usually you can explain like linear regression or logistic regression to like in lay terms to anyone if
Mhm.
you're um, if you have enough patience. Uh, typically this is the case. So I imagine for you, you need to use models like decision trees maybe or linear models, right? Or not
So,
really?
so actually, logistic regression works quite well.
Uh-huh.
Like surprisingly, yeah, we've tried a couple of models. We've tried decision trees. We've tried boosting algorithms. We've tried support vector machines because it's like somewhere in the middle of the data set. But we found that actually regression has performed best, like with the features that we selected and the number of features that we selected. And by best, I mean both in terms of the overall performance and in having a lower likelihood of overfitting, because this
Mhm.
is what typically happens with trees if you go to random forests and XGBoost and whatnot.
Actually, there was now when you talk about that, I remember there was a competition on Kaggle also on survey data. I don't remember what was the target, but it was some social, also
Mm-hmm,
social
mm-hmm.
sciences. And their linear models worked best too. Like the winning solutions, they used linear models.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm actually not surprised, but also like as a side effect, or not maybe side effect, but like as a benefit, you can explain in simple terms
Yeah.
why it works, like why at the end the result is high risk. Because you say like this answer has this sort of weight, this answer has this sort of weight, because like this person said true to that statement and false to that statement. We think that maybe this is a financial abuse, right? Or maybe this is
Yeah.
emotional abuse. And then because they understand now how it works, then they are more likely to use the tool and trust it, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is what we're hoping, and we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get like the uh some of the decision. Like yeah, it's much easier to explain for sure because you just have like the coefficients and you can get the odds ratio from that.
And what else do you do on the development side of things? Everything.
Everything. Like when it comes to model development, like yeah, it's funny because I started the MLops course that you do, and I'm still at the first homework because I built the MLops workflow, let's say like with ML flow. I started with PyCaret and then I left it because it was too heavy, like for the app itself. Yeah, so I did like the whole model development cycle, obviously like with a lot of input from both Balin and Babs in terms of like what outcomes we want, like what statistical tests maybe we should focus on, like when doing X and Y. But in terms of yeah, model development, it's kind of been like yeah.
Mhm.
And what my previous colleague Joy did in the past, like in terms of recoding data, the analysis he did, and the initial models.
Mhm. So you would say that your main focus is on the modeling side, like creating
Definitely.
model.
Like my main and only focus, really. Yeah, yeah.
Aha.
My colleagues were laughing that I'm really bad at selling, and that's because I haven't practiced.
Right. What is the most challenging thing for you?
I think, yeah, I think the very pragmatic aspects of data are is challenging in the sense that I can build all of these models and I can have all of these metrics and I can run thousands of models. I can put them on AWS, la la la, all of those stuff. But then what does that actually mean? Like what happens afterwards? If a person answers X, Y, Z on a question, what happens? Right? And being able to test that and validate that, I think, is the testing of the final models, like having the real setting in mind is definitely the hardest thing. Because I think
Mhm.
also like testing for ML models, I feel it's not as developed as unit testing or integration
Mhm.
testing as it is in software development. So I found it quite difficult to like
Mhm.
wrap my mind around that and figure out a way to
Mhm.
do it. But yeah,
And
I'm working on that and like we're working on scenarios in order to make that happen and make sure that even like sure like our models work on the bulk of the data, but we also want to make sure that for each individual we're getting answers in the range that we expect. So this is another thing that we do in addition to other tools, because we're really our main goal is to be there and help every single victim of domestic abuse.
and yeah, it was a bit packed, so I'm trying to like I'm a bit lost. So like
For sure.
I took some notes. So you said like you want every individual to answer in the range we expect, something like
No,
that.
so we want
What does it mean?
that things make sense, right? Like
Hmm.
if like the models they output a probability, right? That's all they do. What that probability means is something that we interpret. Is that high, low, medium risk? That's one thing. Second, it's regarding the severity of abuse, right? Because a machine learning model will not make the difference between someone controlling your finances and or checking your Facebook account or hitting you. So these are all things that we're taking into consideration. And we want to make sure, and I think this is kind of a bit of data validation, like the output of the model is within what we would expect as humans to see as a high or low probability. But the probability is outputted by a logistic regression. They're just there to optimize for victim or non-victim. They're not giving more detail than that. So that's what we need to do.
Mhm. I think I'm starting to understand. So here, the idea is that like a model just gives a number,
Yes.
but we need to also remember that, well, there is a human there,
Yes.
to which we kind of, to who we calculate the number, but also like this number, what does it actually mean, right?
Yeah,
Like how
exactly.
high it is. Because like in a usual logistic regression case, like if it's 0.51, 51, right? Then you predict that this is y equals 1, right? Otherwise,
Yeah, yeah,
y
yeah.
0.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously, as you know, like when you do model optimization, you play
Mhm.
with the thresholds,
Yeah.
right? You see what gets you better results or not. But that doesn't really tell us, like, is this person like a high risk? Does this person need immediate
Mhm.
intervention? So this is why we need all of this
Mhm.
post modeling testing
Mhm.
in
Okay.
order
Because like
to, yeah.
what you're saying is there could be two people. For one, the risk is 0 point, like 60%. For other is 90, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the 90% case needs a more urgent help, right?
No, no. I think like in terms of relative scale, that's definitely the case. But
Okay.
like at what point do you say is it high
I see.
risk? I think that's more what I'm going with.
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So one thing is predicting positive. Okay, like there is an instance of, I don't know, digital abuse, but also
Yes.
like to what extent, like after which cutoff point we need to actually intervene as soon as possible, and which is
Exactly.
like, I see.
And also, what types of abuse has the victim already admitted to? So, for example, if a victim has been choked at some point, that's already quite a severe thing.
Hmm.
So in that sense, like that person is already high risk, even though a model might not see it like as fully
Hmm.
high risk. But usually this does happen, fortunately. But the thing is, you don't know until you test like all of these different scenarios, right? Like you have what model metrics give you is overall performance. And I do trust that because but it doesn't give you the individual results. And those tend to be more important. And this is why we want to focus on them. So I think that's quite a difficult thing. I think it's very underdeveloped, like in machine learning, but it's something that we're focusing on.
Hmm. And, how many data scientists are working on this?
It's me and Balin working
So two.
on it,
Okay.
yes, and a lot of advisors to help
Hmm.
us like shape it in the right direction.
Hmm. And then, like you mentioned, MLops and all that, but like I'm wondering to what extent you need these tools right now, or more, it's more like right now it's more modeling heavy because there are so many unsolved problems or
What do you
unanswered
mean?
questions. Like, I mean, like maybe now your focus is on modeling side, but once you have a very good model, then you focus more on deploying this model. This is what I mean.
So we've already deployed the model
Mhm.
and we're piloting and we're working on ensuring that the model is stable over time. But yeah, the MLOps part and like setting up an experiment tracking has been very important
Mhm.
for sure.
You use something like MLflow for that, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hmm. Okay. And the survey that you mentioned, is it open?
The what?
The results of the survey, like there are 7,400 people who took part. Like, are the
Yes.
results open in any way, or it's
No, not at the
uh
moment.
okay? Like I'm just wondering, like if it's okay to ask you about some things you found out in this survey, but maybe you cannot share. But if it was open, then you probably can share that.
Yes, I'm happy to. Yeah, I'm happy to share what I've shared already. I think like with the flow of the conversation, like yeah, everything has been like within the realms of what I can share. So more specific statements, I'm very happy to
Yeah, I'm just
answer.
curious, like usually probably more women than men have this problem. But like, are
Yes.
there men who, like, because we talked about that there is this bias, social
Mhm.
disability bias, was it? That
Desirability bias, yes.
how can you say it again? This social
Social desirability bias.
desirability. Yeah. So maybe men even like don't even think that they need to seek help.
I would say that it's the case for both women and men about seeking help just because it's intimate partner violence. That's like a very difficult topic. And I think one of the misconceptions is that the person can just leave the relationship, which is absolutely not true because they have become partners with this person because they love them. So
Hmm.
maybe they think the person will change,
Hmm.
or that things will be different. So maybe they reach out at some point, but then they change their minds. And it's usually quite difficult for people who are close to them to intervene as well.
Hmm. And percent-wise, like in this data, do you remember how many men and women?
I will tell you that so men typically experience more emotional abuse, whereas women experience more physical and
Uh-huh.
sexual abuse, and overall women experience more abuse overall.
Uh-huh. I see.
Yeah.
And for you as a person, like, must be quite difficult to work with this data, like, because like every line in this data is a person, is a tragedy, right? Because like they have to live with this situation, this.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say it's a bit similar to, well, I don't want to compare myself to a doctor, but I think that as a medic, for example, you get to desensitize at some points based on the amount of things you see. And I won't say that I got desensitized, but I think sometimes, like, I just look at data. I don't look at what actually has happened. I look at numbers because at the end of the day, these models are fed with data. And I think about, okay, how can I get these metrics higher? So when I do the model development bit, I don't really think about it. I just think about how awesome it is that I get to help these people. Uh, and yeah, but when I go into the analysis bit and starting to think about like, oh, what correlates with physical abuse? And you see like how abuse doesn't happen in isolation. And you're thinking about all of these experiences of victims. When I go into the analysis bit, that's when I feel it the most.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think we should be wrapping up. Mm. So
Yeah.
usually one question that I ask most guests is if there are any recommended literature or material around the topic. Um, so maybe there is something that you can recommend, not necessarily about domestic abuse, but maybe about social sciences or things that helped you in your career, or something like that, like any book or other resource that you can recommend to the listeners.
Many. I think I have databases of resources.
Hmm.
So I think in terms of domestic abuse, actually two Netflix shows that approach this thing quite well would be Reindeer most recently and Maid, looking at domestic abuse, both
Hmm.
well, or abuse in general through both the lens of a man and a woman. Then I think one of the recommended readings I still have on my reading list is Look What You Made Me Do in the area of domestic abuse. And then in the area of other areas, so many. I think the first thing that comes to mind is a networking website called the Portfolio Collective, which is quite niche. It's usually for people having multiple skills that they leverage, usually freelancers doing all sorts of different things, maybe in the same field, maybe in different fields, and they have great social events. And obviously, Data Talks, I think, is actually a great resource. So I would recommend that. But I think it goes without saying because it's free and you can work and get a certificate at the end. So that's wonderful. And Ironhack because I know the teachers. So just
Yeah.
shameless promotion.
Yeah. Okay. How did it feel to be on that side of the podcast?
Good. I think, yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting when you get lost in the middle of the point and you're trying to
Yeah, that
take it
happens.
back in.
Mhm.
It's a learning experience for sure.
For me, it's easier because like I keep notes. I
Oh,
have time
wow.
to
Theirs are
actually,
so structured.
yeah,
Look at
like
that. Do you have diagrams? Is that a decision tree?
no, but like some sort of diagrams, yeah. Like I was also drawing that like there is a person who is asking a survey.
Oh, right.
I was just trying to
Yeah,
visualize like how it actually happens. So for me, it's a bit easier because you do most of the talking and I'm just asking questions and then taking notes. And then like based on the notes I took, I ask other questions. And if I run out
yeah,
of
yeah,
ideas, I go back to other notes and then, okay, I wanted to ask about that. Okay, so
yeah.
thanks a lot for joining me today. And thanks everyone too for joining us today, for listening in. And thanks for sharing, Sabina.
Thank you for the
So
invitation.
yeah, and with that, we should finish. We should be finishing. So have a great rest of your day and of the week, and see you soon.
Likewise. See you soon.
Bye.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.